The thing about Ristorante Aurelio was that it knew how to behave. The lighting was warm and even, every table draped in ivory linen, every glass polished until it caught the light like a held breath. The staff moved through the dining room with the precision of people who understood that their purpose was invisible comfort, and Elena Bennett had been providing that invisible comfort 5 nights a week for 2 years. She was good at it. She was good at reading a table from across the room, at knowing which couple needed 10 more minutes with the menu and which one needed to be moved along before the kitchen backed up. She was good at smiling through tired evenings and remembering that the woman at table 7 liked her mineral water with a slice of cucumber and not lime. On this particular Friday she wore her cobalt blue uniform blouse, her auburn hair pinned neatly at the back of her head, her green eyes tracking the room with the automatic attentiveness of someone who had done this long enough that it had become reflex. She was 26 and she was managing her section and her sister Nora's tuition payments simultaneously, which was the kind of thing that made you very good at prioritizing. The Romano table was in the private dining room to the left of the main floor. Elena's manager Pietro had given her the quiet briefing when she arrived for her shift. Rosa Romano was dining with 2 friends, the private room was theirs for the evening, standard service, no photography. Pietro had said this with the particular professional gravity he reserved for certain names. Elena knew the name. Everyone in the city with any connection to the restaurant industry knew the Romano name. She did not know the full details of what the name meant, but she knew enough to understand that the private dining room received exceptional service without requiring prompting. At 8:42 she was clearing a table near the archway connecting the main floor to the private room when she noticed the woman. She was perhaps 50, wearing a sharp crimson blazer over a cream blouse, her dark hair cut in a severe line at her jaw. She moved through the restaurant with the certainty of someone who did not believe in being stopped, and she was aimed at the private dining room with an intensity that made the small hairs on Elena's arms rise before her mind caught up with her body. The woman walked straight past the host station without stopping. Pietro was across the room with another table and did not see her. Elena watched her push through the glass partition into the private dining room. Elena set her tray down. Inside the private room, Rosa Romano sat at the center of the table. She was 62 and wore her silver hair pinned with a jeweled clip, her soft lavender blouse the color of early morning. She was in the middle of saying something to the woman on her left when she noticed the intruder, and her expression shifted from warmth to careful stillness. The woman in the crimson blazer was talking now, her voice low and clipped, and Elena could not catch the words from the doorway but she caught the tone perfectly well. Contempt. Old, settled contempt that had been waiting for an occasion. Rosa set down her glass. She spoke. Her voice was measured and dignified. The woman in the crimson blazer raised her hand. Elena moved. She did not think about it. Her feet crossed the distance between the doorway and the table in 4 quick steps and she put herself between the woman's hand and Rosa Romano's face. The palm caught Elena across the cheek with a sharp crack of sound that stopped every conversation in the private room. The entire restaurant went quiet. Elena's cheek stung. She was breathing fast. She stood her ground. Rosa Romano made a small sound behind her. And from the direction of the bar, across the main dining room, came the sound of a chair pushed back and footsteps that were unhurried and deliberate and growing closer. Elena became aware of him before she saw him. She became aware of him the way you became aware of a change in pressure, something large and certain moving through a space. Then she turned and he was there. He was enormous. 6'4" at least, with the breadth of someone who had spent years building himself into something that could not easily be moved. His dark navy suit jacket fit him the way expensive things did, which is to say it strained slightly at the shoulders and sat perfectly everywhere else. His dark hair was short and his jaw was set in lines that suggested he had decided something and was now completing it. From beneath the collar of his white shirt, the edge of a detailed Roman eagle climbed his neck in dense black ink, the wing tip disappearing behind his left ear. On his left hand, the back of it visible at his cuff, a compass rose spread its points across his knuckles. His dark eyes found Elena first. Then they moved to the woman in the crimson blazer. Then they moved to his mother. Rosa Romano, still seated, looked at her son. Then she looked at Elena. Then she reached out and took Elena's hand in both of hers and held it. The woman in the crimson blazer had gone very still. Dante Romano crossed the remaining distance to the table. He stood between the woman and his mother. He did not raise his voice when he spoke. He did not need to. His voice was low and even and it carried in a room that had gone completely silent. "You are going to leave this restaurant now," he said. "You are not going to return. Everything between our families will go through our lawyers from this point forward. You understand me?" It was not a question. The woman understood. She left. The dining room held its breath for one more moment and then, with the particular discretion of a very expensive restaurant, it resumed. Dante Romano turned to look at the woman who had stepped in front of his mother. Elena Bennett, still standing, her cheeks still stinging, her green eyes meeting his dark ones steadily because she had been raised to look people in the eye and she was not about to stop now. "Your cheek," he said. "It is fine," she said. He looked at it for a moment in a way that suggested he disagreed but was choosing not to argue about it. "What is your name?" he asked. "Elena," she said. "Elena Bennett." Rosa Romano was still holding Elena's hand. She pressed it now and said very quietly and very firmly, "This girl protected me. She stepped in front of my face. This girl." Dante looked at Elena for a long moment. His expression was difficult to read, something precise and attentive behind the controlled stillness of it. "I know, Mama," he said. "What would you do if you saw someone about to be harmed and you were the only one close enough to stop it? Follow this story and drop your answer in the comments below." Pietro appeared at Elena's elbow within 2 minutes, his face carrying the specific expression of a man who was professionally calm and personally alarmed. He told her she could take the rest of the evening, that he would cover her section, that she should go sit down. Elena told him she was fine and went back to her section. She finished her shift. She carried plates and cleared glasses and refilled water and smiled at a family celebrating a birthday at table 3 and was very careful not to look toward the private dining room more than twice. Both times, Dante Romano's dark gaze found her before she found his. At 10:15 the private dining room concluded its evening. Rosa Romano paused on her way out and took both of Elena's hands again and thanked her in a warm torrent of words that Elena received with a smile and a quiet "You are welcome." Rosa had warm brown eyes and the kind of face that had been beautiful for so long it had become something better than beautiful. She pressed Elena's hands once more and then her son appeared at her elbow. He looked at Elena over his mother's silver head. "A moment," he said. "Not a question." His mother smiled at Elena as though something had been confirmed and went to retrieve her coat. The dining room had thinned by this point. Pietro was at the far end of the floor with a late table. The host had stepped away. Dante Romano and Elena Bennett stood in the quiet near the partition. Up close he was even larger than he had appeared from across the room. The Roman eagle on his neck was part of a larger composition. She could see now, a detailed landscape of ink climbing from beneath his collar. On his left hand the compass rose was precise and fully rendered, its points reaching toward each knuckle. Along his right forearm, above the cuff of his shirt, the profile of a robed saint emerged from the shirt sleeve. The work was dense and intentional, the kind of tattooing that took time and someone who knew exactly what they were doing. His face was striking in the way that faces shaped by a combination of strong genetics and serious living sometimes were, dark-eyed and not easy to read. "How is your cheek?" he asked. "Fine," she said. "Really?" He studied it for a moment with the expression of someone conducting a quiet assessment. She resisted the urge to lift her hand to cover it. "What she did to you was not something you should have had to absorb," he said. "You put yourself between my mother and harm. I want you to know that I understand exactly what that cost you and I am not taking it lightly." Elena looked at him. His tone was direct and genuine and completely without performance. She had expected something more elaborate from a man of his evident standing. "I did not think about it," she said. "I just moved." "I know," he said. "That is actually the point." He looked at her for one more moment and then he said, "I would like to speak with you again. Not tonight when you have had a long shift and your face hurts. But soon if you are willing." She said she was willing. He nodded once, thanked her by name and went to join his mother. Elena watched them leave through the restaurant's glass front doors. The town car waiting outside was long and the driver held the door with the practiced ease of someone who had been doing it for years. Pietro appeared beside her with 2 glasses of sparkling water and the expression of a man who had questions he was choosing not to ask. "Well," he said. "Well," Elena agreed and took the water. She took the bus home because she always took the bus home and she sat by the window and watched the city lights and thought about the way he had said exactly what that cost you, as though he kept careful accounts of things. Her apartment was a 1-bedroom she shared with her sister Nora's enormous collection of college materials, Nora having moved home for the semester to save on housing costs. Nora was asleep on the sofa when Elena came in, a textbook open on her chest, her red gold hair fanned across the cushion. Elena turned off the lamp and went to bed and stared at the ceiling for longer than she meant to. She did not expect him to come to the restaurant. She had assumed the follow-up would be a message through Pietro, perhaps a formal letter with a lawyer's letterhead, the kind of thing that people with town cars and private dining rooms did when they wanted to express gratitude at a comfortable distance. He came himself at 8:30 in the morning, 3 days after the incident. Elena was setting tables in the main dining room. The restaurant did not open until noon, and the morning light came through the windows in long clean bars, falling across the ivory linen and the polished glasses. She was wearing her street clothes, a navy cardigan over a white blouse, her auburn hair loose, and she heard the front door open and turned, and he was there. He was in a deep sapphire open-collar shirt and dark trousers, and with his collar open the extent of his tattoos was more visible. They climbed from both wrists up his forearms in dense, detailed patterns. The compass rose on the back of his left hand. The figure of a robed saint along his right forearm. A banner of Latin script wrapping his left wrist in neat cursive. Above his collar on the right side of his neck, a small lighthouse, fully detailed, its beam directed toward his jaw. He carried 2 coffees in paper cups. "I should have called first," he said. "I did not, and I apologize for that. Do you have 20 minutes? She told him to sit down, and they sat at a window table in the morning light, and he gave her one of the coffees without asking whether she wanted it. She wanted it. He told her about Romano Grand. For 2 years, he said, he had been working to transition the Romano family's holdings into legitimate hospitality and real estate. The hotel was the centerpiece of that transition. 14 floors, 108 rooms, a rooftop terrace, a ground-floor restaurant, and a full-service spa. It opened in 4 months. He had the property, the design team, the construction crew, the licensing. What he needed was a director of guest relations with the particular combination of calm competence and genuine warmth that made the difference between a hotel people returned to and a hotel people simply stayed in. He said he had watched her manage the dining room for 3 full hours after a woman had struck her across the face, and she had not dropped a single order, had not let a single guest feel any disruption, and had smiled at the birthday family at table 3 with what appeared to be completely genuine pleasure. "I do not give positions to people to repay kindness," he said. "That would be an insult to both of us. I am offering you this because you are clearly the right person for it." Elena held her coffee cup and looked at him. She thought about her sister Nora's tuition bill, which sat on the kitchen counter with the persistence of something that knew it was being avoided. She thought about her savings account, which was doing its honest best and falling short. "What does the position pay?" she asked. He told her. She kept her expression neutral with some effort. He slid a card across the table. Ivory-colored, heavy stock. Romano Grand, it read, and below that his name and a direct number. Elena picked up the card. She turned it over once in her fingers. "I would need to give 2 weeks' notice here," she said. "Pietro has been good to me." "Of course," he said without hesitation. "I would expect nothing less." She looked up at him. In the morning light his dark eyes were clear and direct, and she found that she believed him. She was not sure exactly what she believed him about, but the belief was there, solid and a little surprising. "I will call you this week," she said. He nodded. He stood and finished his coffee and thanked her for her time, and she noticed that he thanked people for things specifically and genuinely rather than reflexively. She called him on Wednesday. She accepted on Thursday. She gave her 2 weeks' notice on Friday, and Pietro hugged her and said she deserved every good thing. On the bus home she took out his card and looked at it for a long time. Romano Grand was not yet open, but it was already itself. Elena understood this within the first hour of her first day, standing in the half-finished lobby with the design team and Dante's operations manager, a quiet, efficient woman named Cara, looking at the bones of something that was going to be exceptional. The lobby was white marble and tall windows, 14-foot ceilings, columns of pale stone. The light from the west-facing windows fell across the floor in wide trapezoids that shifted as the morning moved. The rooftop was already complete, a terrace with low hedges and cobalt blue planters, the city spread below it on all sides. Elena wore her forest green blazer over a cream blouse on her first day, her auburn hair loose, her notebook open. She took notes. She asked questions. She introduced herself to the construction crew by name and made sure she knew theirs. Dante appeared mid-morning in a charcoal suit, his tattoos visible above his collar and cuffs as always. He moved through the space with the ease of someone who had walked it 1,000 times in his head, pointing things out to his operations team, noting things that needed adjustment. He glanced at Elena across the lobby and nodded. She nodded back. Something in the air between them held for a half-second before they both returned to their respective purposes. Cara noticed. She said nothing. In her second week, Rosa Romano appeared. She came on a Tuesday morning when Dante was across town in a meeting, and she swept into the hotel with the manner of someone who owned the place, which, Elena supposed, was not entirely inaccurate. She wore a sapphire blazer with a cream scarf and carried the same jeweled clip in her silver hair that she had worn the night of the incident. She found Elena reviewing catering supplier options in a sun-filled conference room on the second floor and said, "Come have lunch with me. I insist and I will not pretend otherwise." They walked 2 blocks to a small Italian cafe that Rosa had patronized for 30 years. The owner brought menus and Rosa waved them away and ordered for both of them. Then she laughed and apologized. "I do this," she said. "My son is the same. We decide what things should be and then we do them and later we ask if it was all right." Elena smiled. She said it was perfectly all right. Rosa looked at her with warm appraising eyes over her coffee cup. "He was not always going toward this," she said after a time. She meant the hotel, the legitimate business, the transition. "He took on the family work because our family needed someone to take it on and he was the one who could. But he always wanted to build things. Hotels, restaurants, properties, things that made people feel welcomed. Things that lasted." She paused. "He is happier now than I have seen him in a long time." Elena considered this carefully. She said, "He seems like someone who finishes what he starts." "Yes," Rosa said, and smiled as though Elena had confirmed something. They ate. Rosa told stories. Elena found herself laughing twice in spite of herself. That afternoon she passed the open door of Dante's second-floor office and he glanced up from the blueprints on his desk. The late light caught the ink on his forearms. His expression shifted almost imperceptibly when he saw her, something warming in it that he did not quite suppress before the professional neutrality settled back in. She kept walking. She was aware by the end of the 3rd week that something was building. She was also aware that she did not know what to do with that information yet, so she filed it away and focused on the catering contracts and the guest relations procedures and the staffing plan for opening week. She tried not to think about the way the lobby's west-facing windows made everything look like it was made of light. The word began traveling through the city's social elite on a Thursday, quietly at first and then with gathering speed. The boutique on Via Settember that Claudia Marchetti had operated for 11 years, the one with the marble entryway and the hand-lettered window and the appointment waiting list, received a certified letter from its new landlord. The property had been acquired 6 weeks prior by Romano Holdings. The lease was expiring. The renewal would not be offered. The boutique had 60 days to vacate. This was item 1. Item 2 arrived the following Monday. The Harrington Club, where Claudia's events company had held the premium catering contract for 5 consecutive years, informed her company that the contract would not be renewed at its upcoming annual review. The Harrington Club had identified a new catering partner. Romano Provisions, a subsidiary of Romano Holdings, would take over the contract at the start of the next quarter. Item 3 came in through 2 separate social channels on the same Wednesday afternoon. The Meridian Circle and the Beaumont Society, both of which Claudia Marchetti had considered among her most valued memberships, both cited their respective review procedures. Both arrived at the same conclusion. Membership not renewed. No threats had been made. No confrontations had occurred. No voices had been raised. Everything had been conducted in the bright, clean offices of Romano Holdings, in the ordinary course of business, signed and filed and sent by courier during regular business hours. Elena heard about it from Kara, who had heard about it from the hotel's communications consultant, who had heard about it from 3 separate people in the same afternoon. She went to the second floor and knocked on the open door of Dante's office. He was at his desk reviewing operational documents, his charcoal jacket over the back of his chair, his tattooed forearms resting on the desk, the compass rose on his left hand catching the afternoon light. She said, "People are talking about what happened to Claudia Marchetti." He looked up. "I know," he said. "You bought her landlord's building. You took her catering contract. You had her memberships reviewed. Her landlord was looking to sell. It was a good property." He sat back in his chair. The catering contract went to the better provider. As for the memberships, the boards of both organizations reviewed their criteria and made their own determinations. Elena looked at him. "You made all of that happen." He held her gaze steadily. "Nobody touches my mother," he said. "Nobody touches someone who protected her. I keep accounts, Elena. I do not forgive debts and I do not forget credits. What Claudia Marchetti did in that restaurant was a debt. What you did was a credit. Those are 2 different things and they both get settled." She stood in his doorway for a long moment and she thought about the certainty in his voice, the complete lack of performance in it. He was not trying to impress her. He was simply telling her the truth about how he moved through the world. She said, "Your revenge was very efficient." Something shifted in his expression, a brief warmth that surprised her. Thank you, he said. I take some pride in it. She went back to her desk and thought about the way the afternoon light had sat on the compass rose on his hand and tried to concentrate on the guest relations staffing plan. She was mostly successful. If someone protected the person you love most and paid a personal price for it, what would you do to make things right? Follow this page and tell us in the comments. And if you are here for the forbidden romance developing in these halls, you are in exactly the right place. Uncle Enzo Romano had been the consigliere of the Romano family organization for 22 years. He had gray at his temples, a stout build that he carried well, and the habit of wearing a burgundy jacket in most seasons because he had worn one the day of an important meeting decades ago and things had gone well and he saw no reason to change the formula. He came to the hotel on a Thursday afternoon when the lobby was quiet. Elena was at the guest relations desk off the main floor and she heard his voice through the open door, warm and carrying, the voice of a man who had spent decades managing rooms. He found Dante in the ground floor meeting room, which had tall windows on two sides and the afternoon sun moving across the oak table in long flat angles. Enzo closed the door. Elena was not in the room. She learned what was said later. Enzo told Dante that he had been watching. He said he was not a man who pretended not to see things. He said the woman was extraordinary and that this was not in question. Dante told him to say what he actually wanted to say. Enzo said, "The timing, Dante. The exit is not yet complete. The organization still has expectations of you. Feelings are one thing but complications are another and at this particular moment you are generating complications." Dante stood at the window with his hands in his trouser pockets and looked at the city. He said, "The exit will be complete by December. I have said this and I will do it. The transition documents are in final review. The remaining holdings are being restructured. By the new year the Romano name will be attached exclusively to legitimate business and nothing else. This is not something I am asking permission for, Enzo. I am telling you because you are family and you deserve to know from me directly." Enzo was quiet for a while. He said, "Your father would have argued with me for 3 hours and then done exactly what you are doing." Dante looked at him. Enzo said, "I am not standing in front of this. I want you to know that. I have been in this business for a long time and I know what it costs and I think you are making the right choice." He paused. "I also want you to know that the woman is worth it if that is what you are weighing." Dante said, "I know what she is worth." Enzo straightened his burgundy jacket. Then stopped watching her from doorways and say something useful. He left. Dante stayed at the window for a long time after, looking at the city in the afternoon light. Elena, back at her desk, was reviewing opening week staffing with Kara and wondering why the air in the building felt slightly different than it had that morning. She could not name exactly what had shifted. She was beginning to understand that when things shifted around Dante Romano, they shifted quietly and completely, and you usually only recognize the change in retrospect. It happened on a Tuesday evening in the third week of October. Elena had stayed late to finalize the vendor list for the opening reception. The sun had gone down and the city outside the lobby windows was lit in amber and cool white, the office towers throwing light across the early dark. She said good night to the evening security team and walked across the lobby and pushed through the glass front doors to the street. She had gone perhaps 30 feet toward the parking structure when she became aware of the man walking beside her. He was lean and sharp-suited, perhaps 40, with close-cropped dark hair and the manner of someone who had practiced being casual in ways that did not come naturally. "Elena Bennett," he said. Not a question. She kept walking. "My name is Marco Ricci," he said. "I represent certain interests that have been affected by recent business decisions. Claudia Marchetti sends her regards." He paused. "She also asks that you consider whether your current position offers the kind of stability you are looking for. People in certain roles sometimes find that the environment around them becomes complicated. It might be worth thinking about whether simpler work suits you better." Elena walked to the entrance of the hotel and pushed back through the glass doors. The evening desk manager looked up. "Is Dante still upstairs?" Elena asked. He was. She took the elevator to the second floor and knocked on the open office door. He was at his desk, his jacket on, reviewing a document. He looked up. She said, "A man named Marco Ricci just followed me to my car on behalf of Claudia Marchetti and suggested I consider finding simpler work." The change in Dante's expression was not dramatic. It was the opposite of dramatic. It became very still, very precise, the way the center of something becomes very still when everything around it is in motion. He stood. He said, "Are you all right?" "Yes." He did not do anything. He just walked beside me and talked. "Did he touch you?" "No." Dante nodded once. He picked up his phone. He said into it, Get me Pietro Ferrara and tell him I need a conversation about Marco Ricci. Tonight. He set the phone down and looked at Elena. It will not happen again, he said. She believed him. She also had a question she had been assembling since the moment she walked back through the doors. How bad is this going to get? She asked. I need to understand what I am in the middle of. He looked at her for a moment. She could see him weighing honesty against reassurance and choosing honesty. Not bad, he said. Claudia is operating from a position of diminishing resources and she knows it. Ricci is a message, not a plan. She does not have the standing to escalate beyond what you saw tonight. He paused. But I want you to understand that I take what happened seriously. Nobody who works for me should have to navigate that in a parking lot. Elena looked at him. She said, I walked back inside and came straight to you. I did not panic. His expression shifted just slightly. I know, he said. That does not surprise me. She went home. On the bus she sat by the window and thought about the way his face had gone still when she told him. Not angry. Not performing anger. Just still and precise and already in motion. The apartment was on the 8th floor of the Romano building on Set Via, 2 bedrooms, a wide kitchen with generous windows, morning light from the east and evening light from the west. The building had a full security desk in the lobby and a team that Dante described accurately as very thorough. Elena resisted the move for approximately 48 hours. She said she did not need protection. She said she had been managing her own life for 6 years without assistance. She said the apartment she had was perfectly fine. Dante listened to all of this and then said, while Marco Ricci is still an active consideration, the move is not negotiable. After Ricci is no longer an active consideration, you make your own decisions about where you live. But right now I am asking you to let me keep you and your sister safe while I handle this, and I am asking you to trust that I can handle it. He said it directly and without pressure and she understood that he meant all of it. She agreed. Nora, who had been listening from behind the kitchen door with Elena, was certain, full knowledge that she was doing so, appeared the moment Dante left and said, We are moving into a secured apartment in his building. We are, Elena said. Nora said, Elena. He is clearly in love with you. Elena said, help me pack. Nora helped her pack. She was also, it turned out, charmed by the new apartment, which was significantly larger than the 1-bedroom and had a desk with excellent morning light for studying. She settled into it with the cheerful adaptability of someone 20 years old who was willing to find most things an adventure. In the building's lobby one morning she encountered Dante and introduced herself and said, Thank you for the desk. It faces east and the light is very good. Dante said she was welcome and looked slightly startled by the simplicity of the exchange, as though he had been prepared for something more complicated. Nora told Elena over dinner that the man was obviously in love with her. Elena said that was not what was happening. Nora ate her pasta. The matter of Marco Ricci was resolved 5 days after Elena and Nora moved in. Dante told her, simply, that his team had had a business-like conversation with Ricci about the professional risks of bothering employees of Romano Holdings and that Ricci had found the conversation persuasive. Claudia Marchetti had made no further moves. The following week Dante found Elena on the rooftop terrace in the late afternoon, reviewing the setup for an opening week event. The terrace was complete, the cobalt blue planters full, the city spread in every direction below, the sky going from blue to pale gold at the horizon. He stood beside her and they both looked at the city for a moment without speaking. He said, I want you to know something. The transition documentation was filed this morning. The remaining organizational holdings will be restructured over the next 8 weeks. By December the Romano name will be attached to nothing that was not built honestly. She looked at him. He said, I wanted you to know. Not because it changes your work here but because it matters to you. What this place is. What this family is. I have watched you work here and I understand what kind of person you are and I want you to know what kind of person I am working to be. Elena stood with the city below her and the light going soft and she looked at the man beside her, at the lighthouse climbing his neck and the Latin script at his wrist and the dark eyes that had been paying careful attention to her since the night she stepped in front of someone else's raised hand. I know what kind of person you are, she said. I have been watching too. He held her gaze for a long moment. Something in his face opened briefly before the stillness settled back in. But she had seen it. She turned back to the event layout and he stood beside her and they worked through the setup together as the city went gold below them. The Romano family meeting was held on the first Saturday of November at the house on the hill above the city. The house was wide and old and the drawing room where the meeting took place had tall windows on 3 walls and cream-painted plaster and afternoon light that lay flat and bright across the oak floor. It smelled of good coffee and Rosa's persistent preference for fresh flowers, cobalt blue hydrangeas today in a clear glass vase on the mantelpiece. Enzo was there in his burgundy jacket, sitting in the armchair by the window. 3 other senior members of the Romano family organization were present, seated at the long table. Men who had been with the family for decades. Men who understood exactly what this meeting was. Dante stood at the head of the room. He had not brought notes. He did not need them. He said, "The Romano organization will complete its transition to fully legitimate operations by the 31st of December. All remaining business holdings have been restructured or are in final process. The documentation is complete and filed. Romano Grand and Romano Holdings are the family's future. This is not a proposal. This is what is happening." The room was quiet. One of the men at the table said, "This is a significant change to how this family has operated." Dante said, "Yes, it is." The man said, "There are relationships, obligations, things that do not dissolve easily." Dante said, "I know what our obligations are. I have managed every single one of them personally over the past 2 years. None of them will be left unresolved. I'm not walking away from anything. I am building something new in its place. Something that lasts differently." Enzo stood. The room looked at him. He was 63 years old and had been in this family longer than anyone else present, and when he stood it meant something. He said, "I have watched this family for 40 years. I watched this man's father and his father before him. I know what this life costs. I know what it takes, and I know what it takes from you." He looked at Dante. "What is happening in this room today is the best thing I have seen this family do. I am behind it completely, and I am behind him completely." The room was quiet again. Then one at a time the men at the table said the same. That evening Dante drove to the hotel. It was past 7 and the lobby was quiet, the evening light settling over the white marble and long soft bars. Elena was at the guest relations desk, finalizing the last logistics for opening week, a coral-colored blazer over her cream blouse, her auburn hair pinned up, reading glasses she had not told anyone about perched on her nose. She heard him cross the lobby and looked up. She saw something different in his face. Not the professional composure she had learned to read over the past weeks. Something underneath it, something certain and open. She took her glasses off. He stopped on the other side of the desk. He put his hands on the edge of it and looked at her and said, "I have something to tell you. I have had it in my head since the first night I saw you, and I have been waiting until I could say it without conditions attached to it. Without until I handle this or when the business is settled. I wanted to be able to say it clean." She waited. "I want to build this life with you," he said. "Not just the hotel. The whole thing. All of it. I want you in every part of it." The lobby was very quiet. The hydrangeas in the lobby vases, cobalt blue, shifted slightly in the air from the ventilation. Elena looked at him across the desk. She thought about the night he had asked her name in the restaurant. She thought about the morning coffee on the empty table, the cards sliding across the linen. The rooftop and the city going gold. The way he kept exact and honest accounts. She said, "I think I have been in every part of it for a while now. I was just waiting for you to notice." He smiled. It was sudden and complete, and it transformed his face in a way she suspected not many people had seen. She smiled back. Romano Grand opened on a bright Saturday morning in the first week of March. The day was clear and cold and the lobby was full of light, the west-facing windows throwing broad white bars across the marble floor, the hydrangeas in the cobalt blue vases crisp and perfect. The door staff wore deep navy uniforms. The concierge desk gleamed. The flowers in every arrangement were fresh and specific, and someone had made sure of it. Elena Bennett stood at the center of the lobby in a deep red blazer over a cream silk blouse, her auburn hair down and smooth, her green eyes moving across the room with the automatic attentiveness of someone who had made invisible comfort her professional purpose for 6 years and had brought that purpose here to do something larger. She greeted the first guests by name. She knew which family had the corner suite and that their youngest child was 8 and had asked about the rooftop pool. She knew which couple had chosen Romano Grand for their anniversary and had arranged for something small and specific to be in their room when they arrived. She knew the catering team's first names and the sommelier's preference for the storage corridor temperature. She was, in other words, precisely what this hotel needed. She had known that for months. It was a good feeling. Dante stood at the far end of the lobby near the corridor to the event spaces in a charcoal suit, his tattoos visible at his collar and cuffs, his presence as large and certain as it had always been and entirely at ease. He watched the lobby filling with guests and staff and the particular bright business of a new thing opening. His eyes found Elena regularly. Rosa arrived at 10:30 in a sky blue dress and a silver wrap in her jeweled clip, and she came through the front doors and looked around the lobby with the expression of someone seeing something they had believed in for a long time finally standing in the world. She found Elena and took both her hands. "Look at this," Rosa said. "Look at what you did." "We did," Elena said. Rosa patted her hands and said, "Yes. We." And she smiled with her whole face. At 11, Uncle Enzo arrived with a bottle of very good Prosecco and the information that he had been holding it since December in expectation of exactly this morning. He found the group of them near the lobby bar, Dante and Elena and Rosa and Cara and Pietro, who had driven across town to attend the opening of his former waitress's new domain. Enzo poured. He raised his glass. He said, "To the Romano name. May it stand from this morning for things that last. For things built honestly. For rooms that welcome people and send them home better than they came." He looked at Dante. He looked at Elena. He raised his glass a little higher. They drank. Claudia Marchetti was not present. She had relocated to Milan 6 weeks prior, following the quiet conclusion of her social memberships and the closure of the boutique on Via Settember. She had left without a public statement, which was, by all accounts, the most dignified option available to her. Nobody from the city's social circle had called to ask how she was settling in. Marco Ricci had not been seen in the city since November, following his businesslike conversation with 2 members of Dante's operations team. He had found, apparently, that other professional environments offered better prospects. At noon, when the lobby had reached its full opening day warmth, Dante found Elena in a quiet corridor off the main floor, the one that led to the event spaces, pale stone walls and good light from above. He stood in front of her. He offered her his hand. She took it. She looked up at him, at the lighthouse climbing his neck, at the compass rose on his hand now wrapped around hers, at the dark eyes that had been paying careful attention to her since the night she stepped in front of someone else's raised hand without thinking. "So this is legitimate," she said. "All of it," he said. "The building, the business, the name." He looked at her. "If you want that word for it." She did want that word for it. She had wanted it for a while now. She told him so. He held her hand and they walked back to the lobby together, back into the light, back into the morning of the thing they had built. The marble floor was warm with sun. The hydrangeas in the cobalt blue vases were as blue as a clear sky. Rosa Romano, near the bar, caught Elena's eye and smiled the way someone smiled when something they had known was true finally announced itself out loud. Elena smiled back. Outside, the city went on with its Saturday, bright and ordinary and full of the ordinary business of people building things and choosing who to build them with. Inside, Dante Romano held Elena Bennett's hand and the Romano name stood for something new.